to my followers, all five of them, I guess, from Texas. Politically incorrect old white guy here again, and the topic of today's segment is the recent election. Before we get into that, I want to go back to our little discussion in the last segment about sovereign wealth funds and specifically Norway's sovereign wealth fund. I neglected to navigate to the graphic that I was discussing, so I'm bringing that up again. You can see that Norway's sovereign wealth fund was started in about 1998, and the purpose of it was to invest the surplus revenue from the North Sea oil, which they've done very astutely. And now in 2023, the fund is worth $1.6 trillion, which is a heck of a lot of money, and especially when you consider the small number of people in that country, it works out to a massive amount of money per capita. They invest a large amount of the money here in blue in equities, so that's stocks of publicly traded companies around the world. They own a chunk of every significant corporation in the world, pretty much, and they've done very well. As you can see, we've got exponential growth here. They invest some money in fixed income, bonds, not as much as you would expect, and then a couple of other little things, real estate and so on. This is 2023, so I suspect, given the performance of the stock market in 2024, this thing is up to close to $2 trillion at this point. When you consider there are only about 9 million people in Norway, I think that's the number. I may be wrong, but anyway, I don't have to do the math because someone else has done it for me. And I will show you that here in a second. Here we go. Norway is right at the top of the list here in terms of the value of their sovereign wealth fund per capita, and at that point, or the point of this chart, which looks like it was made on 2 years ago. So this is 2 years ago now, 2022. It was $280,000 per person. Good old US of A was at $33,000, and that's all invested in government IOUs, no equity there. You can see there are some other countries with significant wealth funds. Per capita, Singapore, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. You might say, well, those are all oil-producing countries. Well, pal, the United States is the biggest oil-producing country in the world, and look at us. This is pathetic. I don't know how we missed the boat on this thing, but it's pretty pathetic that there's only that amount of money, $33,000 per capita, put away for, I guess, old age pensions, and I'm not sure where Medicare factors into this. I don't think it does. It may. It says public pension funds, assets under management per capita. That's just a big IOU from the federal government to the Social Security Trust Fund. In the words of the pension industry, it looks like we are underfunded. People say that if you want to retire comfortably in the United States, you need about $1 million to maintain a decent lifestyle for a couple, and $33,000 just not going to cut it. $278,000 or $9,000 is a lot better. And by now, I suspect that was 2022. I suspect that figure is probably closer to $500,000 per capita. So Norway's getting to the point where their obligations are fully funded or close to it. Okay, so all good in Norway? Yes, no, because Norway, in addition to stashing all this oil money in this fund, they tax the heck out of everybody, both through income taxes and through almost punitive sales taxes, to the point that you don't have a whole lot left to spend on things that you want to buy, as opposed to things that the government thinks you want to buy, you should buy. So they have punitive taxes because they're a heavily socialist country, and other people's stuff, there's no free stuff, there's only other people's stuff. And the problem with that model is you've got government officials, elected or otherwise, who are spending other people's money, and that's typically a side effect of that is typically chronic waste. So let's look at something else. The flip side of this coin in Norway, and that is here is a chart of sick days per year in Norway. Guess what is at the top of the list with about per worker sick leave per year? Looks like about 26 or 27 days per worker per year. Whereas Greece, which is another socialist country, for whatever reason, they only have about 2. And you might ask yourself, well, why? The other countries that are up there are Finland, a very socialist country, Portugal, somewhat socialist, France, probably the most socialist country of them all, Spain, Turkey, a European country. What's going on here is, because of the punitive taxes, it doesn't cost you much money to take off from work. At the end of the workday, most of your money goes into government in one form or another, and you don't get paid a whole heck of a lot. You don't end up with a lot of cash in your pocket. So taking time off doesn't cost you anything. And the other problem with that is, with these socialist free stuff places, is work now becomes something you don't have to do. You can get by on the dole, as it were, and work is no longer a survival necessity. Work is something you do because you sort of want to, or in some cases, for the fortunate few, you love your work, but most people don't love their work, let's face it. So people don't want to go to work when they've got all this free stuff coming, and work doesn't pay very well after tax. So that's the downside of these heavily socialist countries like Norway. People just don't have the work ethic that they used to. Okay, so having said that, let's talk about the election that was certainly controversial, exciting, and there's still, even though the dust is somewhat settled, there's still a lot of bickering and anxiety and second guessing going on. Why? Well, the problem is, in the United States, we have a system where you end up with a one-size-fits-all domestic policy. What does that mean? That means that whichever government is in power imposes their domestic policy on everybody, and not everybody is on the same page there. If the government were idiomatically, if they were the only supplier of ice cream and they only offered two flavors, chocolate and vanilla, and half the country loved vanilla and hated chocolate, and the other half hated chocolate and loved vanilla, you're going to flip-flop from one situation from the election to the next, to a situation where one half of the country is always mad and unhappy and bitter, and they leave the country. Some of them. Well, good luck to those folks. They moan and groan. It's not conducive to national unity at all. It's a very dysfunctional approach, and what I've suggested is to devolve most aspects of domestic policy to the states, and we don't need 50 of them. We don't need 50 little United States. We only need about 10 at the most. If you look at the election map, you probably could get away with 3 or 4. The West Coast, the middle of the country, the Northeast, and maybe 1 or 2 other little enclaves. Devolve your domestic policy down to that level, and now you get the ice cream you want. The people that want chocolate get chocolate. The people that want vanilla get vanilla. Everyone's happy. If the election was only about foreign policy, defense, and the FAA, air traffic control, and so on, it would not be as controversial or bitter. And I can guarantee you that the 50-50 split wouldn't be there anymore. So that's my take on the election. People say the Republicans say they have a mandate. It was a landslide, overwhelming majority, blah blah. But the reality was, it was about split down the middle. Most places, some places the Democrats killed it. Other places the Republicans killed it. But by and large, most states was 50-50, and on the national basis it was 50-50. So now you've got 50% that were happy under Biden are now bitterly unhappy under the upcoming presidency of Trump, and so we lurch from one end of the spectrum to the other. That's no way to run a railroad, in my opinion. If you look at the campaigns of the individual parties, Kamala Harris ran on equity, freedom, and unity, as best I can tell. I think she had a hidden agenda, and I think she was deceptive, and that's one of the reasons she lost. Several people discerned that, or many people discerned that. What did she really mean by these buzzwords? Well, one could say that if you translate those words into French, equity is égalité. Unity is fraternité, brotherhood, and freedom is liberté, which was the banner of the French Revolution. And I think it's not a mistake that she picked those 3 words. I don't think that's a mistake. I think that was a clear signal to the rabid Marxist elements in the country that she was pro-Marxist and looking to, how did Obama phrase it, radically transform the United States. And the immigration influx, in my opinion, was part of that plan. They imported the future Bolsheviks, is what they're doing. They're importing a disaffected class of people so that their ranks will swell to the point that they can effectively bring about a Marxist revolution in the country. You might say I'm nuts, I'm crazy, but that's my opinion. Fortunately, we're still all entitled to our opinions, although one of the other flavors of the Democratic platform was we need to stamp down and quash this misinformation and disinformation, which, you know, is very alarming because, you know, who's to say one man's misinformation is another man's opinion or fact. So there you have it, liberté, freedom. When you asked her to get specific, she would kind of duck the question or talk about being middle class. But on freedom, she the only thing she really brought up was abortion, which is really a non-issue now because it's been sent back to the state level, and in most cases, the policies are not extreme, or the states are not extreme. You know, it's ironic to me anyway that someone could run a campaign on the freedom to kill your own baby. That to me is shocking. But again, that's my opinion. Equity is different than equal opportunity, and they've tried to explain that several times. Equity means equal outcomes, and that's straight out of Karl Marx, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. And as Kamala stated several times, some of us are left behind and they need to catch up, so we're going to give them more. And so, for example, her plan to give people money to buy a house or to give them tax credits for having children was aimed at those people who are at the bottom end of the scale. And it was a part of her nascent Marxist policy to bring everybody up so that we all have, in the end of the day, all have equal outcomes. That obviously didn't go over with everybody. And then the unity thing, that was just very strange because they wanted unity, but at the same time they were calling people that didn't agree with them garbage and domestic terrorists and all sorts of clingers and all sorts of nasty insults were lobbed at them. That's not unifying at all. But what they really meant by unity was, again, no dissent, tamp down on dissent, ultimately one party rule. And again, there you have the Marxist playbook. So that whole cone of ice cream wasn't appealing to everybody. Although surprisingly, you know, a lot of people, almost half, licked it up. Surprising to me. On the other hand, Trump promised to make America great again, and to make make everybody wealthier, especially the middle class that have really been the big losers in the last 30, 40 years in this country. There was a time when every middle class wasn't a chicken in every pot. It was a pickup in every driveway, a 4-bedroom home for everybody who put in an honest day's work and a family vacation. Those days are gone. That lifestyle is shrinking, and Trump's platform was that he wanted to bring all that back, and in addition, make America, you know, the dominant world power again, make them respected as we were back in the post-Second World War years. That's really not realistic. I'm sorry, I can't buy that entirely. I mean, I think he will help the economy, and there will be benefit that will flow to pretty much everybody as a result, and not just to his billionaire pals, as the Democrats are fond of saying. but we are not going to be the world superpower ever again. We were the dominant world superpower for a long time. Those days are gone. They're not coming back. We now have China as a rival superpower. We have Russia still in the picture. The United States is not going to dominate the world scene, the world economy as we once did. That's just not going to happen. That's like the British Empire. Once it's gone, it's gone. That's not to say that you can't improve on the status quo, and I think Trump is a better choice from an economy perspective, and a lot of people voted for him based on his stance on immigration, which he never really articulated, other than the crime aspect. He never really articulated, the real reason that we want this immigration stopped or reversed. There's no such thing as a multicultural country where everybody's happy. This multiculturalism is proving to be problematic in every country where it's been tried. The immigrants increasingly do not assimilate. They form their little enclaves in various parts of the country, hang on to their religions, their language, their culture, and their traditions. And I hope he or his advisors realize that this immigration wave was a forerunner of a more ominous cultural and political struggle. So perhaps he knows it and he just didn't say it or couldn't say it. But we don't need any more. We don't need a large, oppressed, what's the word? Disaffected class of people that are ripe for propaganda, pro-communist propaganda, and possibly a violent political revolution in this country. We just don't need that. Thank you very much. So, people liked that aspect of his campaign. And the government efficiency thing is something I've talked about at length, and he's talked about the swamp and this new Department of Government Efficiency, where he's aiming to cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse that we've heard so much about forever. I'm not sure that I buy that he's going to really accomplish anything there. People have tried that for tried to attack that, going back to the Grace Commission. It just doesn't happen. It's entrenched. Without major structural reform of government, it's just not going to happen. I was pleased to read that they agree with me that the Department of Education needs to go, and that function needs to be returned to the states. And I'm also pleased that they're not going to blindly greenlight all the military spending. Again, I feel that there's just as much waste in that arm of government as there is in any other. So perhaps they will make a dent, but I fear that without radical restructuring of government in the United States, it's going to be just that, a dent. Trump, the big disappointment to me of Trump's first term was he made very little progress in cutting the size of governments and reducing the deficit. In fact, he increased the debt just as every other administration has done. So those are my thoughts on the election. I think Democrats are going to get over it, and their day will come back, and they'll get their chocolate ice cream or whatever flavor it is they like. Um, Republicans are going to be somewhat disappointed. I don't see in 4 years, or even if there's a successor Republican president, I don't see with uh, the game plan as currently articulated, I don't see us digging out of our debt mess. It's all nibbling around the edges. You really have to do something radical for us to turn this ship around at this point. And it's getting to the point where, you know, the hole is so deep that I'm not sure that there's a bloodless or relatively bloodless way of doing that. All right, well, that's it for this session. Thank you for your time. As always, comments are welcome. And have a government-free day.